Silent Hill 2, the sequel to the game that truly fleshed out and explored the world of psychological horror as opposed to just plain survival. Focusing more on fear of the unknown and creating extremely tense and haunting atmospheres, Silent Hill shined new light on this genre and became one of horror's most legendary game series. Silent Hill 2 would then go on to be one of the greatest games in this field, being talked about for years and decidedly being the best in the series to most fans for its beautiful soundtrack, terrifying world and disturbing yet emotional story of James Sunderland, a simple man who visits the town in an effort to find his wife, even though he believes she's dead. This game was also the first to introduce what would become one of the most well-known monsters in horror games, Pyramid Head. Here, I would like to compare the art for the game's main European, North American and Japanese releases. There's always been a soft spot in my heart for the box of Silent Hill 2, as it was the first Silent Hill game I'd ever bought. It was dark, intriguing, surprisingly more disturbing than any other horror game I'd played up to that point, and came with a really nice cardboard sleeve. So this box is very simple in its design. It's very subtle and doesn't give much away on what the game actually is or what it's about, but does give an indication that it's shrouded in mystery. The title font looks like it's connected by webs, and the somewhat visible view of a young woman's eyes give off a sense of horror and thriller, especially with the primary colour being black, and deathly worn, faded colours like white, blue and green. As I stated before, the title seems to be connected by web-like strings. This seems to be the representation that everything is connected, from words to actions, and it all has meaning. James's sudden calling to the town from his dead wife, Maria turning up, the acts of his guilt manifesting itself throughout Silent Hill, allowing himself to see the monsters. Then there's Laura, who used to know Mary and had a connection to her in the hospital, which then leads her to being with James. It's all connected to what he did in the past, and it's come back to haunt him. These web-like strings could also be used to show the signs of aging or something left, abandoned. Mary drove James away and it made him feel miserable and depressed, like he did all he could for her, but the illness drove them apart. This aggression caused them to see each other less and less until the very end, where James finally took the plunge and set Mary free from her suffering. Because of this traumatic event, he repressed these memories, but soon enough he was called to the town to return and face up to what he did. These memories, abandoned, forgotten, gathering dust and cobwebs. The woman on the cover is either Maria or Mary, and is already trying to mess with your mind in deciding who it actually is. It's very difficult for me to decide. On one hand, I think it could be Maria, as her eyes look young, seductive and deep, traits that Maria gives off because she herself is possibly just a part of James's mind who is unable to deal with his sexual frustration, missing dearly the beautiful and desirable Mary he once knew before her illness, and so he's met with a woman who looks just like her, but is more attractive and sexually appealing. But it could also be Mary, because of the faded look of the picture. From what we can see, could be an old photograph, like the one that James carries around during the game, with different things happening to it depending on actions taken at various points. The black lines above and below the woman's eyes are also visually similar to a piece of film strip, which could be a nod toward James's memory of him and his wife staying at the Lakeview Hotel. There they made a videotape but forgot to take it with them when they left. A third notion is that the black lines also suggest degradation and decomposition, as Mary had a terminal disease that wore her away painfully and changed her appearance from a beautiful young woman to look like an ugly monster, covered in scars and sores. I find it a great design choice to have the box merely just pitch black with the view of someone's eyes, because there are two meanings that I feel can be behind it. One, this is the feeling of being inside the town of tragedy. Due to a mine fire, the entire town is shrouded in fog and thus makes it difficult to see even a few meters in front of you. This partial blindness gives Silent Hill its amazing creepy atmosphere, and even greater meaning to walking into the unknown. And two, the area that we see is only a fragment of James's mind. While he knows that his wife is dead, he still goes there looking for her, trying to get answers of what's behind his visit. But as the game goes on, we find out that it isn't just a man looking for his wife. It's about redemption, owning up to the guilt, and facing up to the truth. The colour of it, pale blues and greens, could signify death, and that could point back to Mary, as she's been dead for 3 years, as James says himself, but in a lesser extent could also point to Maria, as she doesn't seem to exist outside of James's mind, and therefore isn't alive. Black is also a major colour to signify death, and the large amount of it used could mean more towards the character. You see, it's difficult to determine between the two in your own mind, and from this small clue, it's an indication of what's to come for James in Silent Hill. The North American cover to Silent Hill 2 has similarities to the European cover, but enough to distinguish it apart. The colour used on the picture here is similar, but has a lighter aspect to it and going with more greens and whites and less black. The font here is black instead of white, but has a large surrounding of white mimicking the font in a rough and almost violent way from behind, yet still being connected by web-like string connections. These strings again play a significant part of the story with the theme of connection. Even though James and Angela, the lady on the cover, don't share much screen time together, they're still connected with their paths crossing in the town on multiple occasions. Their actions affect one another as well as events in the town itself. Cause and effect. It's all connected. Apart from the size of the picture and the layout, the biggest difference here is obviously the choice of character for the cover. This is Angela Orozco, a young woman who came to Silent Hill looking for a mother. It is revealed that she has had a tough and torturous upbringing with her family, as she was abused physically, emotionally, and sexually by her always drunk father and brother, with a mother who knew of it but never did a thing to stop it before running away and leaving her alone with the two. Several years later, after trying to escape from her family, her father dragged her back into an abusive life. With all the years of abuse and trauma, this poor young teenage girl finally snapped, and after great suffering stabbed her father in the neck, slicing his throat. It's also implied that she killed her brother too, then ran away on a search for her mother, who she believed was in Silent Hill. It's unknown if her mother actually resided in Silent Hill, or even if she was still alive at the time of this, but it could have been possible that Angela was just called to the town, made to face up to all the trauma and the murder she committed. It's a very interesting choice to have her on the cover. While she is an important and incredibly sympathetic character, she isn't exactly connected significantly to James. Yes, James does save her on a few occasions and helps her end her suffering, but she isn't an icon of the series such as characters like Pyramid Head or James. Having Mary or Maria on the box seems more of a logical thing to do if you're advertising the games for its characters and story in the main aspect. I'm not saying this is a bad decision, not in the slightest. If they were planning to show the sympathetic, happens in real life, sorrowful and heartbreaking vision of the kind of people who are trapped in Silent Hill, then yes, Angela is definitely the saddest and the most emotionally stirring by far. She was a completely innocent girl who was broken by other people who took advantage of her and destroyed her life for their own selfish and pathetic needs. Her face on the cover says all that needs to be said. The Japanese box stands out as being the most visually contrasting to the others, who show characters from the game. This one, however, decided to show red squares which are used as save points and are scattered throughout various points in Silent Hill. This cover features the save points against the background of a rusty metallic wall with a light shining on it and features the words, "The darkness that lurks in our minds." This particular set of save points, however, is unique, as it's the only one in the game to feature 9 in one place in a 3x3 grid. All others are just single squares in places such as pasted on a wall, down a well, on a car bonnet, or even on a table. This one is located in Lakeview Hotel during the Nightmare Otherworld sequence before you fight 2 versions of Pyramid Head. It's interesting to note that this is the final save point in the game before the last 2 bosses, and where James ultimately comes to terms with all that's happened and finds his resolution. When you save the game, the screen flashes a blinding shade of red, which makes James's head hurt. This represents James struggling to recollect and make sense of his memories with his past where he murdered his wife. On the save screen, James's face is clearly visible but has an eerie red shade over it. It's like he's looking in a mirror and looking at the murderer staring back at him, his dark side that is capable of creating creatures like Pyramid Head. While it's never been truly and fully revealed what this unique set of save point actually means in the game, fans have had many different ideas of their own. Some say it represents the well-known 9 levels of hell and has similarities with James's situation. Others say it's to do with the seal of Metatron, a symbol that has significant meaning with the Order, Silent Hill's cult. And a smaller theory believes that these save points act as windows that pierce through the fabric of time, which allows James to go back, as it were, if he dies. Therefore, the town is making him face up to his past no matter what. Some don't believe there is any significance behind it at all, and is merely there to indicate that it's a very important place to save your game, seeing as how there are several boss fights coming up, and it's the end of the game. I personally believe that the 9-grid save point shows that James's mind in Silent Hill has shattered into pieces, and has now only come together, causing him to finally open up to the truth, and show him that what he's done and how he must repent. It's all the memories coming back, all together, and finally giving him the peace of mind of remembering what he did. The etching of "the darkness that lurks in our minds below" seems to allude to this. So from the box cover, it has already taken you straight to the end of the game and given you a glimpse of where everything seems to make sense and plays a very important role in the story. From the lighting that seems to be illuminating the save points, it can be assumed that we are looking at them from James in a first-person perspective. During the story, he finds a flashlight in the Brookhaven apartments that clips onto his jacket. When looking at the final save point in the hotel, he had the flashlight still on his person as he inspected them. This puts us in James's shoes. Like with the other two covers, I still believe the title represents connection. Having the save point acts as James' mind connecting the events back together, it seems to go hand in hand with the theme. The words that are etched underneath the points, "the darkness that lurks in our mind," is very obscured and hard to read because of the odd-shaped letters and are being covered by various labels on the front. There is a piece of music that plays in Brookhaven Hospital when the monsters start to appear with that very title, and it's significant for it to be that location. Mary spent a lot of time in hospital and was the beginning of James's depressing and torturous descent. It could also act as foreshadowing that James isn't a normal innocent man dragged into the town, but a murderer that has a dark side in part of his mind that he's repressed, a dark, shadowed side. Maybe the creatures in Silent Hill aren't the only monsters roaming around. It's hard to decide which cover I like best, as they all seem to represent something different and all have clearly unique themes to them. From an interpretation standpoint, I'd say that the European and North American both have great messages behind their covers, even if it's all just personal opinion. From a visual standpoint, I would then choose the Japanese cover as it stands out more, and the layout seems more consistent and shows that the game is a gritty horror.